All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share this one because that's what I want you to see. I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to move all your faces somewhere so that I can see what I look at. Okay, sorry. All right, so welcome to Meet the Evaluator, in which you will get to see multiple ridiculous pictures of me and my family. I am Teresa Jardina. My connection to natural creativity is through my young person, Gus, who started at NC in the spring of 2018. I also have another young person, Sage, who is 4. And now my partner, Jason, is a content specialist at the NC Woodshop. So I am very familiar with natural creativity and that. Professionally, I am a special education teacher by training. I work at HMS School for Children with Cerebral Palsy, which is an approved private school in West Philadelphia. I'm a teacher there. I'm also co-director of our newest program, which is called HMS Connect. As far as my certifications go, as far as what the Pennsylvania Department of Education says I can do, I have an elementary education certification, middle school science, special education, which is mine nursery through 12th? Mine's either called nursery through 12th or it's called K through 12. I can't remember, but the whole grade level. And I am also 2 pieces of paperwork which are out of my control away from being certified as a special education supervisor. And so these certifications mean that I can do evaluations across the grade levels, elementary and secondary. And so I am also a parent of a lifelong, of 2, I guess, lifelong self-directed education young people, Gus and Sage. Gus has been involved in a lot of different Philly-based SD groups and schools. So we've sort of seen things from a lot of different angles. And just as, full disclosure, I also sit on the board of trustees of the Philly Free School, which is a Sudbury model school now in West Philadelphia. And in case anyone cares, I'm in graduate school for my master's in educational administration, which might be as boring as it sounds, but relates directly to the work that I do. And I'm being trained to be one of the co-directors of the Philly Roller Derby Juniors. And as you can see in this incredibly attractive picture, I am on the hunt for the best vegan wings. And my hashtag, if you want to follow me, is hashtag 40 vegan wings for my 40th. Turned 40 in September and decided that this was the year of vegan wings. So, okay, so let's talk about portfolios. If you are a homeschooler in Pennsylvania, we are considered a high regulation state. And unlike New Jersey, in New Jersey, you just tell them you're homeschooling and then you're supposed to teach a lesson on the Constitution and you're like done. But in Pennsylvania, we are high regulation state, and we require a portfolio that is evaluated by someone who is allowed to evaluate portfolios, usually someone with a teaching certificate, although there are some other people who can do it. We'll go over each of these things a little bit more in detail, but as far as what the state of Pennsylvania says you must have, you must show attendance, which is 180 days in the school year, which is either it's 900 hours for elementary school, 990 hours for secondary school. A reading log, samples of student work, standardized tests in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade, and the portfolio evaluation requires a interview with the young person. I will go through each one of these pieces of the portfolio. Okay, so you need to show attendance. This is literally what Gus turned in last year for his attendance calendar, because in self-directed education, we believe that learning happens every day. So this is totally acceptable. Or you can, this is the background picture here is actually the attendance calendar example from the Philadelphia School District. You can take that, you can color in the days that you did school till you reach 180. You can use a Google calendar, you can use a paper calendar that you then take pictures of. I had a family who used a spreadsheet, and every day that they did, like it was a Google sheet, and every single day that they did stuff, they wrote stuff down that they had done that day, and then they gave me that spreadsheet. It was incredibly detailed. But you have to show 180 days. That starts from the day that you file your paperwork. So if you are a returning homeschooler, you homeschooled last year, that day is July 1st. If you are a new homeschooler, it's whatever day you started, but then you don't actually you have to reach like 180, including days that you might have been somewhere else. So if you were in a full-time school and then you switch to homeschooling, you don't have, like, the 180 days is a little more loosey-goosey because it also includes those days that you were somewhere else. Okay, the other thing you need, or another thing you need, is a reading log. You should really expand this in your mind from reading log to watching and listening to as well. This log can include anything that the young person read or listened to, podcasts, documentaries, instructional videos on YouTube, and it can be things that were read aloud to them. It can be audiobooks. It can be books that they read with their eyeballs. It can be things that they watched, things that they listened to. And it does not have to be a comprehensive list, which means it does not have to include every single thing that you read throughout the year or experienced. It's a sample. So it is a list that includes things, but it doesn't have to be every single thing. Some families keep those receipts from the library and take a bunch of pictures of those or scan those in. I've had families take pictures of a pile of books. So like, let's say they're like, young person is super interested in, mushrooms, and they check out a whole bunch of books about mushrooms from the library, and they like snap a picture of that pile of books. And then in 2 weeks, the young person is really interested in cakes, and there's a whole bunch of books about cakes, and they snap a picture of that, and they sort of like tag all of those pictures, reading log. Some people keep like a Goodreads list or another online list like that. Some people keep a list on their phone or on their computer, etc. I will often refer to like what other people do and then tell you what I do, as both so I don't do anything anymore because I make Gus do it. So he is supposed to keep a Goodreads list of everything he reads so that he can include that in his portfolio. Is he doing it? I don't know. Somebody ask him when you see him. I reminded him, but I'm not sure he is. Okay. One of the other things that needs to go in your portfolio is a sample of work. I like to think 5 to 10 samples of work. That's usually sufficient. Some people like to include a lot more, and that's fine too. You don't have to feel like you have to include something that hits every single objective or every single thing that you've done that year. It really is a sample. And they can really be about anything you did during the year. What that looks like, it could look like very traditional things. If you're doing workbooks or worksheets, you can include those. If you're using apps or websites and they give you reports, those are samples. But they could also be pictures. I love pictures. I will totally get to that question. And pictures might be part of this. So I love pictures, pictures of field trips, pictures of things that you're doing, pictures of 1 year. I think 80% of our portfolio was pictures of Gus cooking, because that was what he was really into. So I would just snap pictures of him when he was cooking and include those in our portfolio. If you go places, any of those sort of field trips, brochures from places that you went, tickets. A lot of people, if they go to a museum or they go to I can't think of places that people go anymore because we don't go anywhere yet. You go to a theater show and you include the playbill. You can include the map from the museum and all of those things all count towards samples of work. So samples of work is like really can really be anything that you're doing, especially when we're talking about sort of the more unschooly, self-directed, like whatever people are doing, that's sort of fine. And that's a lot of times why I encourage photos, because I think that sometimes the thing that someone is doing doesn't really feel like it can be captured through a writing sample or something like that. And I also really like photos because a lot of what I do during, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but during the actual evaluation process with, the young person is look at the pictures and say things like, oh my gosh, are you holding a snake? Can you tell me what is going on here? Because, if they don't know me, they don't want to talk to me about this like handwriting page that they did, but they do want to talk to me about the time they held a giant snake. And if your young person is in 3rd, 5th, or 8th grade, they have to take a standardized test. And unlike if you were in public school, you can't opt out. So this is a list of tests that are accepted by Pennsylvania as a standardized test that you can put in your portfolio. Some of these are able to be given at home with with a parent or a family member as the proctor. Others need to be given by a non-parent or potentially by a trained professional. For instance, the Woodcock Johnson, I believe, must be given by a psychologist. The PSSAs are on there. Homeschooled students are able to participate in the statewide PSSA testings at their local school, but you usually have to tell them that you want to do that when you register to homeschool. So it's probably too late now to do that. Also, I wouldn't personally recommend it, but you can and you're allowed to. So I usually give the CAT, or the California Achievement Test. And the reason I give this one is because it's offered in an untimed format on the computer. It can be given at home. You can do it over multiple days. And when it's finished, you get the results immediately. It is also cheap. It's usually about $25 to $30. But any of these are acceptable. Another thing that's important to know about giving the standardized test is that you must give it when the young person is registered in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade. However, you do not have to give the 3rd grade test to a 3rd grader and the 5th grade test to a 5th grader. If it is more appropriate to give your young person a different grade level, that's fine. So there are people who might give a 1st grade level test to a 3rd grader, or they might give the 8th grade level test to a 5th grader because that makes more sense for their family and their young person, and that's fine. As an evaluator, I need to see the test scores and I need to see that the test was taken. However, I do not look at the scores and say, oh, look at that. They did really well in computation, but their grammar score is below grade level. Nope. I just look at it and I say, I see you took a standardized test this year. Is there anything that you would like to share or talk about? If there are things that the young person or the parent wants to talk about, we can talk about it. But if there's not, I can say like, look, you took it, great. Okay, so portfolio format options. So there are lots of ways that you can do your portfolio. I am sure some of you have ways that you like to make them. In the last year, when I did many more evaluations than I had done in previous years, and all of them were virtual. No, scratch that. They weren't all virtual. They were mostly virtual. These are some of the ways that I saw people do their portfolios. So you can create a slide deck in PowerPoint or Google Slides or Canva with all of the different pieces. You can just make a Google Drive folder that you then share, and then you can upload anything that you want to upload into that Google Drive, pictures, documents, etc. Instagram was a really interesting way that several families made their portfolio. They would create an Instagram account just for their homeschooling, and then they would include pictures throughout the year and captions of activities, sometimes snap a picture of a worksheet, or they might take a picture of a stack of books that they got from the library. They included their test scores by taking a picture and putting it on Instagram. And again, they made this private, so it wasn't necessarily the same Instagram that they were sharing with grandparents and friends and whoever. And they would just share it with me when I became the evaluator, or they might share it with other families that were homeschooling if that made sense for them. Similarly, there were some families that made private Facebook groups and put all their stuff in that. And then they might have, if it was a multi-parent household, both parents as admins on that Facebook group. So they were both able to add things through that. Families that used social media platforms reported that it was easy for them because they already used them, and it felt easy and natural and a part of their day-to-day and their process to just update that throughout the year. So they weren't doing it all at the end of the year. So I was very impressed by some of those people doing it that way, and many of them kept me as like on their Instagram. So I am continuing to follow their homeschool journeys. And every time they post, I'm always like, who is this person? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I did their homeschool val. So another one is having a young person created portfolio. So if your young person is ready or interested to make their own portfolio. Last year was the first year that I told Gus that he had to make his. And he chose to use Canva. He made a slide deck, and then he was in charge of presenting his portfolio at the evaluation. Had I even seen it beforehand? I think I may have not even seen it finished until his evaluation. I don't recommend that. You should probably look at it before we go into the evaluation, but or trust. I believed he was going to do it. And of course, you can do a good old school physical portfolio and binders if that is what works better for you. However, these evaluations are going to take place virtually. So we'll have to figure out the best way to share that. Whether that's taking a whole bunch of pictures of it or figuring out a way to share it during the evaluation. But if that's what works for you, we'll make it work. And there are lots of other options. And if people have other ways that they have done it, feel free to share. Okay. So what happens when we actually have this evaluation? We went over the stuff that you have to have in it. What do we do? So I try to have it be a very chill experience. I need to see that the requirements, as stated before, attendance, reading log, samples of work, standardized tests in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade, and an interview with the young person. I need to see those things. And I generally like if people share their portfolio with me 24 to 48 hours in advance if possible, because it gives me a chance to sort of flip through really quickly and make sure all those things are there. So if you forgot your attendance, I can send you a quick message and say, hey, there's no attendance in here. Can you make sure that you include that before we have our meeting? But if that doesn't work out, either because you aren't ready to share it ahead of time, or I don't have time to look at it ahead of time, we'll figure it out in a moment. Then I go through the portfolio. If it is, digital in some way, if it's Instagram, if it's a slide deck, we usually share screen and we go through it, and either depending on the way that's most comfortable for the young person, either they lead it, and so then they go through and they share the different things, or if they aren't comfortable doing that and I have access and I can go through, I click through. And again, I look at things, and I generally ask pretty open-ended questions about stuff like, can you tell me more about this? And what's happening here? Is that a snake? For some reason, there were so many snakes last year in people's portfolios, people holding lots of giant snakes. And I often ask about what was something you really enjoyed this year? What's something you really didn't like? And depending on, the verboseness of the young person, how much they want to talk to me, that really affects how long it goes on for. And generally, as we see one of those requirements, I usually go, oh, there's your attendance. Check. We're, 25% of the way there. Again, I try to be pretty low key about it, relatively quick, often less than 30 minutes. And my rationale for this is I know that many young people who might be doing this, they don't know me. And they don't necessarily want to spend a whole bunch of time talking to someone they don't know. And that's totally reasonable. However, if there is someone who wants to share a lot with me, that's cool too. Happy to hear about people's year and homeschooling journey. Occasionally I get somebody and they want to tell me a whole lot of stuff about a whole lot of stuff. I'm here for it. But I've also had young people who pretty much make as brief of an appearance during their evaluation as possible, because that's where they're comfortable, and that's okay too. I really want it to be, I don't need to force people to do something in that particular environment if they don't need to. I strongly believe that while this is an evaluation, my job is not actually to judge or evaluate. I'm not grading you. I'm not grading your young person. I'm not grading your portfolio. I am making sure that you meet the legal obligations for homeschooling in Pennsylvania. But the true evaluation is a self-evaluation that the young person engages in with trusted community members. So your partnership meetings with your partner facilitator at NC is really a better time to do that deep diving into goals, barriers, needs, etc., doing those how-tos. That's the person, their partner facilitator, the family partnership meetings, I really believe is a much safer spot for that, and for young people to engage in that they have those relationships. They don't necessarily have that relationship with me. And so to do that more really evaluative work, I feel is really important to do with someone that you have a trusting relationship with. And so I don't like to try to put people into a position where they feel like I'm judging them. So that's actually not what I try to do during an evaluation. So these are the evaluation forms that I send. They're a little small. These are directly from the Philadelphia School District, but they work for all schools in Pennsylvania. And there's an elementary version and a secondary version. And this is what I will send about 24 hours, within 24 hours, I hope, of your evaluation. This is typically all I send. Okay, this is all that gets sent to you. The one thing that I include that is not explicitly put onto this piece of paper, which I put next to my name, is my PPID number, which is the, I forget what the second P stands for. Maybe it's Pennsylvania Personal Identification. It's the number that matches to my certifications. So if a school district was well, who the heck is Teresa Jardina? They can punch in that number, and then my certifications pop up and they see that I'm an actively certified person. I do that now on everyone's, because I had a couple of people come back and say that their school district requested it. It's not a big deal and it's easy to do. So I just put it on there to cover all of our bases. If you are in the Philadelphia School District, then you send this form to Sean Baker, and at homeschooling at psd.com or something like that. Phyllis School District. I like to tell everyone who's not in Philadelphia that I'm I got a guy. I got a homeschooling guy. I got a guy. We send it to him. And I recommend that you send all of your paperwork for next year in the same email. So that'll be that. We'll do a shameless plug for tests, notarizing your affidavit, your objectives, all of that stuff that needs to go, and this evaluation form, one email, and then you're done until this time next year. You don't have to interface with him again. If you are in another school district, you send it to whoever your homeschool liaison is. Sometimes it's the principal, sometimes it's even the superintendent. Sometimes it's some random person at your school. I won't know who it is, but that's who gets this form. If your school district wants more than this, or to see your actual portfolio, you do not have to show it to them. You used to have to show it to them. You no longer have to show it to them. I did have a couple of school districts last year that asked families for more or for a different form, and we were usually able to gently push back with some references to the law, and they dropped it. So this is actually all they really get. So I think that's important to know going into it. These are your big deadlines. All this paperwork that piece of paperwork has to be into the school district no later than June 30th. That's the end of the school year. And then all of your paperwork to homeschool next year must be in no later than August 1st, but it can be in at the same time as your evaluation paperwork. This will go out to you later, but to schedule an evaluation with me, if you would like to do that, I'm going to use Calendly. You just like click on the different times and make an appointment. I tried to give sort of a range of availability, both weekdays and weekends. And again, if you can send me your stuff a little bit ahead of time. And so you want to, each of these time slots is half an hour. If you think you're going to want more than half an hour, just schedule 2 back to back. That's totally fine. I don't mind it being longer than half an hour, but I also don't want people to feel like they have to go into like a marathon thesis defense experience for their portfolio. And if you have multiple young people though, if you could schedule individual sessions for each of them. And there's like 2 questions when you schedule, and it's going to be your young person's name, their grade, and then who the homeschool supervisor is. That's the parent that signed the paperwork generally. I just like to have that information ahead of time because I need to put it on forms. So if you can put it in there ahead of time, it is helpful. And that is what I have there. So I will stop sharing so that I can actually see the chat at the same time. Okay. Okay, so what does this kind of look like for a young person who's deschooling? That's a really great question. Deschooling looks different for everybody. So it's going to look like whatever your young person is doing. If they're doing a lot of like hanging out and eating popcorn, then maybe it's going to look like pictures of them making popcorn. And then I'm going to say things like, what are you doing there? What are you eating? Do you like popcorn? Or if they're spending a lot of time playing video games, that's kind of okay too. And it can be some pictures of that. And then I might say like, hey, what are you doing there? What video game are you playing? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's sort of what it looks like on my end. You do need to still have all of those required pieces. So some kind of reading, watching, listening to log, some 5 to 10 samples of stuff, and standardized tests if they are in 3rd, 5th, or 8th grade.
Teresa, what about if a family does a lot of outdoor experiences like hikes and walks and camping, things like that?
Photos, if you can include pictures, that's great. Or if there's other reflective pieces. So like last year when the narwhals walked all the way around Philadelphia, one of the things that Gus included in his portfolio was a picture of the map that showed their trek around Philadelphia. So it was like, you know, so the sample was a map with the route highlighted. That's great. So, you know, if you don't take a lot of pictures when you go hiking, but like, you know, you want to show like, oh, here, you know, we've been hiking these different parts of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania, and like, here's like highlights of the different routes that we took at different times. That totally works. Or a picture of a kid like picking up some weird, gross thing. I love that.
And what is the cost for NC parents? She asks, already knowing the answer.
It doesn't cost anything for NC parents. It's part of your program fee. It's a steal.
Hooray! Other questions from the audience? No question too small.
Yeah, and so are you going to be sending out the link for the calendar, or, I mean, I wrote it down. Is there an email or to sign up?
Yes, it will go out to everybody by email. I just made it today. That's why it didn't go out yet.
Yeah, it should go out tomorrow in the co-director's weekly email, as well as the recording of this. And
additionally, so the beautiful thing about self-directed education is that, as you saw Gus's calendar, like learning happens every day. So 180 days from July 1st is like December 28th. So you're done with attendance. So as soon as you're ready, we can start doing evaluations. You don't have to wait until June. You can, and if you don't feel ready, or if you are maybe like my family and it's the end of March and you say, oh no, maybe we need other things for you to put in your portfolio this year, then you have to wait until June. But if you've already gathered stuff, we can do it as soon as you're ready.
In terms of notary things, anybody can make an appointment with me via email or text to notarize on a Tuesday or Thursday when I'm at NC. Just let me know ahead of time so I can bring my stamp.
Is that for next year's paperwork?
Yep.
Because I don't remember what I did for this year, but where do we grab that paper? Where can we get that paperwork?
I don't actually know.
Website? I can't remember.
I can include, I'll send a link to test with the PDF of this presentation, but I just use the stuff from the Philadelphia School District. So they have a really great, if you just Google Philadelphia School District homeschooling, they have like a homeschooling starter packet that is actually like, it's what I send to, so I do evals for anyone in Pennsylvania. Well, like you have to be a homeschooler, just evaluate random people in Pennsylvania. But that's actually what I send to everyone. I'm always like, oh, let me send you the Philadelphia School District's one. It's actually really good. So it has the affidavit and it has sample objectives. And I actually really like the sample objectives from the school district, from the Philly School District, because they sort of say things like, we'll continue to explore mathematical concepts as appropriate for age and ability. So I just change the year at the top every year and send the same ones back, because that's my objective for me. And I'm a grown-up, right? I want to continue to explore as appropriate for age and ability. So those ones are really great, but it has an affidavit in there that you can fill in and then Tess can notarize it.
Hi, this is Zara. Is there anything I have to do differently this year because I'm in 12th grade and it's my last year homeschooling?
That's a very good question, and thank you for asking it. So it depends on what your goals are and what you're looking for. Secondary students can be working on a high school transcript, and I will be honest with you and tell you that I have not done it yet, but I have a meeting with another homeschool evaluator who I work with, we're going to talk a little bit about what that high school transcript process can look like, because most of my high school evaluations that I've done have been for people who are not pursuing at this time a post-secondary education. And so they just wanted me to sign the regular paperwork. And there's like a sort of a variety of options for graduating depending on what you want to do. You can get what's called a supervisor issued diploma. So your supervisor is your parent who signed you up to be a homeschooler. They can issue you a diploma, and then I sign it after I do your evaluation, and which you can also get from, I think, from the Pennsylvania Department of Education homeschooling stuff. I can find it for you. So if you just kind of want that, then you get a supervisor issued diploma, and essentially your supervisor, just typically your parent, issues you a diploma and says that you have finished and graduated. There's also more complicated ways in which the Pennsylvania Department of Education can give you a diploma. And I don't have a lot of information about that, because a lot of times it's about proving stuff through a different third party that you are finished.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any other questions? They can be silly questions. Thank you for sharing that link to the school district homeschool starter packet. This is what the high school diploma that's issued by your supervisor. Looks like. Look at it. It's just a PDF.
All of
so you
these,
just fill it
yeah.
in.
All of these things will also be sent out tomorrow. And Teresa, obviously you're available for people to make evaluation appointments. If they have other questions, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can reach out. You can send me an email, ask me questions like that. The other thing that I am qualified to do, and qualified really means just legally allowed to, is if you have a young person who had an IEP, if they were in public school and they had an IEP, and you need a special education approval form that goes with your paperwork when you send it in, your homeschooling paperwork. Special education objective approval form. It's in that starter packet from the school district. I can sign those. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa, for your presence and your offering this to the community. And I hope that many people will find their evaluation process with you to be painless and maybe even fun. That's the goal.